All right, so I am joined today by Maria Natapov. Maria is a certified co-parenting coach. She's been doing this work for at least 6 years, and she's the owner of Synergistic Stepparenting, where she helps co-parents and step-parents to transform family chaos into meaningful and harmonious co-parenting. She follows the BH2O coaching framework, which we're going to hear a little bit more about later in this session. And Maria is located in Boston, but as a coach, she's available and works with clients across the US. And one of the things that really draws me to Maria and the work that you do is that you focus a lot on healing and growth through and after the divorce journey. And not just helping people to survive this experience and come out on the other end, but to really create a better future for themselves and for their families. So, for anyone who's watching this today, if you find yourself either at the stage of considering divorce and sitting with some pretty heavy questions about what all of this might mean to your children and to your relationship with your children, or if you're in the thick of it, whether that's separation or divorce, and you're seeing that you and your spouse really aren't seeing eye to eye and things aren't playing out the way that you wanted them to, this is going to be a good conversation for you. Because what we're going to do today is really explore what the role of a co-parenting coach is, including things like how they can help, when it makes sense to work with them, and then we're going to get into some of the specifics of how Maria actually works with her clients. So, Maria, thank you for taking the time to join this conversation today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks so much for creating this space for this topic. Of course, I'm so passionate about this work, so it's really a treat to
Yeah,
get.
well, this is going to be fun. So, as a divorce coach, a big part of my role is in educating individuals on how to think about and approach the divorce process.
Mhm.
And I usually do that by explaining that divorce can be broken down into four main conversations: a conversation about money, a conversation about parenting if children are involved, and then a conversation about child support and a conversation about alimony.
Mhm.
And asking individuals where they think they may have some challenges in talking through each of those four conversations with their spouse and getting to a place of mutual agreement. Because that's ultimately the work that needs to be done in sitting down and working through the divorce process. And when individuals do have concerns in terms of, I don't really know how to have this conversation,
Yeah.
right? Or I'm not sure that it's going to go too well sitting down with me and my spouse, or I know that we're not seeing eye to eye. I'm not sure we're going to actually get to a place of an agreement. That's
Mhm.
where I start to think about, well, what is the opportunity to bring in a neutral third party? It could be a financial support, it could be mediation support, or it could be, in this case, co-parenting support to help individuals to structure and have these conversations and to get to a place of agreement. And before I met you, when I thought of co-parenting coaches, I thought primarily of the parenting plan because it
Mm.
can be pretty challenging for two individuals to sit down and think through everything that needs to be thought through to create a robust parenting plan. And so I've referred clients to some co-parenting coaches just for that. But
Mhm.
in talking with you, you really opened my eyes to the fact that then there's the actual co-parenting, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the work of doing it during separation through the divorce process and then into the future coming out on the other side. And that's really where your focus is. So I'm excited to explore that with you further today, because I think that that's going to be of tremendous value to anyone who's got children, especially young children, and is going through this process. So let's just start off by hearing a little bit from you about the types of situations or specific challenges that
Mhm.
people are facing when they reach out for your type of support.
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you. It's loaded, right? Because there's so much happening for these folks. Sometimes they're genuinely concerned about their children's well-being and wondering, am I seeing signs of distress from my child? Is there something that I really need to be concerned about? And how should I be navigating this to safeguard their actual safety, right? Like emotional and physical safety. And they're not sure. They're not sure what their rights are or what the best decision is. Or maybe they're hearing, well, my child is saying they don't want to see the co-parent. They don't want to go over there. What am I? I don't want to force them, right? And I think that there's um, a lack of clarity and understanding about where some of these things may be coming from. And I think the challenge is both for professionals, truthfully, as well as for co-parents themselves in these situations, is really recognizing how much am I unintentionally contributing to this perspective or this desire from a child? Because I'll share a little bit about what can unintentionally happen. It's never intentional. Parents are distressed because not only are they overwhelmed by the whole process of divorce and having to uproot their entire life as they know it and dissect it into little pieces and then rebuild it from scratch. But on top of it, they are terrified about having less time with their children. They're terrified about what is the impact going to be on my kids' well-being and their resilience, and how are they going to adjust, right? What does this mean for them? Am I responsible? They're feeling a lot of emotions around like guilt and shame and blame of themselves, but also sometimes it comes out sideways onto their co-parent. And and that's a complicated piece too, because sometimes it's deserved, sometimes it's just kind of displacing the emotions. There's a lot going on for them. And at the end of the day, I think it's really critical to remember we're all human beings. So we're going to have emotions. We're going to get pulled into the messy. And sometimes we just kind of, I think, have this idea in our minds like it's possible to just sidestep the human piece and just jump into
Mhm.
problem solving. Like, here's our new program. We're just going to follow these pieces, but it doesn't work like that. And more importantly, our kids need us to arrive as a whole person because they're a whole person still in development. And they're very much looking to us, and whether they're purposely looking to us or not, they're paying attention to how we navigate these moments, which becomes their blueprint for how they navigate them going forward. So, what that means is, how do we explore how to best respond to the situation while taking everything into account, as much information as possible, because information gives us power. Sometimes people are like, it doesn't matter. I don't need to hear what they have to say. I don't really care about their perspective. But if we're not looking at the whole picture, we can't be as effective about coming up with a potential solution or resolution. We're narrowing our focus, we're narrowing our, rather, limiting our perspective, we're limiting what it becomes available to us, and we're limiting our opportunities for success, right? We're actually kind of setting ourselves up for failure unintentionally,
Mhm.
because many times we're not aware of this, right? This is just kind of a default response because we're overwhelmed and we're trying to do our best and we're just jumping to solve it. So that's the danger. That's one of the dangers, I guess, and pitfalls I commonly see. The other is when we're emotionally dysregulated, functioning from fear. That's sort of what I talked about, but a little bit different. And that can often limit us. And many of us are, either fixers or recovering fixers. We can be, our default is to jump into control, right? I'm scared, so I have to control. I have to fix the situation. It has to be this way. And really, we're just terrified. We're terrified of maybe making a mistake or, hurting somebody, maybe ourselves, maybe our kids, whatever that is, right? And so I think it's really, and what I also see is a lot of us just don't have the skills. We don't realize how we're unintentionally adding to conflict when we don't mean to be, or when we're polarizing our children against their other parent, when again, that's never our intention. So we just don't realize the ways that are how we're being, quite literally, how we are arriving, our essence. And this is deeper than behavior. I think a lot of co-parenting curriculums typically focus on the surface level. Say these things, don't say these things, use this tone of voice, make sure your facial expressions are XYZ. It's not enough, because if our essence in our heart is we're angry, we're resentful, we're, blaming, we're all sad, it's all the other person's fault, or we're a victim of this individual's behavior, our kids are going to feel that. So we're not fooling anybody. They're picking up on that energy. That energy is perceptible. It's not necessarily consciously perceptible. We're not consciously aware of it, and we can't necessarily name it, but we're feeling it, and it's there, and it is poisoning the environment, essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and that it's that at the root of that kind of, I call it the war in our heart. And we talk a lot about what it looks like and what it takes to release that war in our heart, that it's a gift we give ourselves. It's not because we owe it to the co-parent. It's not because they deserve it. It's because our children deserve a co-parent who's free from additional burdens of that war. And they deserve us to be completely free from that because it's what enables us to build a much deeper, more meaningful connection with our child, which is what they really need, especially as they're going through a difficult transition like the separation of their parents and or divorce and or building a new life beyond that. So that's really the value. It's not ever for the other person. It's the gift we give ourselves and the gift we give our children.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? So oftentimes the divorce journey also starts with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions that can really just bear down on you.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing is that lack of clarity and a lot of confusion about how's all of this going to work can be something that contributes to a lot of the overwhelm, right? As parents, we want to make sure that our kids have the best opportunity to grow and to be successful. But now there's all these things that are swirling that seem like they might be threats and be
Yes,
negatively impacting our kids. And then you
absolutely.
mentioned, functioning from fear and that need to fix and control. Yeah, I mean, there's some tough reality of separating the household and no longer having even the influence on the other person
Yeah.
around how they're now relating to the kids and what do you do with those feelings? And then
Mhm.
lastly, you said the skills too.
Yeah.
It's a new
Yep.
dynamic. Yeah.
It is a very new dynamic. And the other piece is so to your point, sorry, give me just 1 second. I have to plug in my laptop. Get
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
It's 1 second. Sorry about that.
No,
Uh,
that's fine.
Human moment. Not planning ahead on my part. Um, so yeah, I think, the reality is a lot of what I see is there tends to be maybe what we would term, and I don't like these terms and I don't like labels in general, but maybe somebody who's more aggressive and or assertive. And sometimes it could be to an extreme where it actually is a coercive control situation or there's kind of unhealthy and toxic dynamics to that, right? Everything is a spectrum. Sometimes it could just be there's one person that kind of tends to take control, and then
Hmm.
another person who may be, wanting to either mediate the conflict or appease it or kind of walk on eggshells or try to avoid it to the best of their ability or and maybe they just tend to shut down. They tend to, be, I guess, what one could call more passive. And so those dynamics, right, especially something that is moving towards the separation and divorce process, usually they've been building for quite a while and that dynamic has been happening. And so it's like you said, it's all they know. So it's easy to sort of get stuck in this cycle and loop. And sometimes parents say to me, I don't even understand how we got here. We became people that we never intended to be. We were
Hmm.
never these people, but here we are. And we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to break these cycles. So this is an opportunity, right? The work I do with them through the BH2O program to break those cycles, but more importantly, to remove that power dynamic, right? To empower the person who maybe has lost their voice, has disconnected from themselves, or tends to perhaps self-abandon. That's another unfortunately common thing I see a lot with parents, to no longer do that. So they get to show up in their integrity, in their leadership, in their values, and it doesn't require bashing the other person or being mean to them or stooping to any sort of level or behavior that they
Hmm.
don't want to be doing, but often feel like that's my only choice. That's the only thing that's my only option, which it's not. And so again, right, because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't have the skills that we've never learned or been exposed to. So this is an opportunity to very intentionally look at what are the skills here and also what's true about the situation, that not just the assumptions I've been making about it, but what is actually here. What are the real facts and what's available to me as far as options for choice of how I behave, how I respond, and who I get to be now. And then similarly, for the other individual, again, recognizing that, um, you know, considering the other person's perspective as well, right? So these are kind of the two different sets. I want to say they're almost coming from two different angles,
Hmm.
but they're both really, really important in feeling empowered. And I think the real magic that I get to witness with parents is it's not about the outcome. It's actually when they learn how not to self-abandon. and not to get sucked into that fear of, oh, if they're treating me this way and if I'm not, responding or reacting to them aggressively or, yelling or swearing or whatever it is that comes to mind to do, then I'm condoning it. That's often the fear, right? Is, oh, if I don't meet them with the same fire, I'm not standing up for myself. And then they're going to think this is acceptable behavior. And then they're going to keep treating me that way. And, right. And it's none of that is true, but they're just not able to see that. And a lot of it I find is a lack of skill and a lack of, um, being able to stay regulated so that we have access to our frontal cortex, which is where all of our logical, rational, creative problem solving and thinking comes into play. Because
Yeah.
whenever we're dysregulated, we're in our what's called primitive mind, fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, and lizard brain, and we just don't have access to those higher functions of our mental capacity, quite literally. So that's the value, and that's it's a system approach, and that's why I support parents to build
Hmm.
a system for effective communication. It's a nuanced approach. There's many pieces, but it's possible is the good news, and that's why I actually think an opportunity like separation or divorce is such a gift because many of us didn't grow up with these skills. And in order to have something really effective and workable, we have to first lay a foundation. So to me, this is a beautiful gift and opportunity to lay that foundation that is not only effective and smooth and predictable and a true structure we can actually lean on, especially during times that are really, really heavy. Because I hate to tell you all, but the secret is we don't get to sidestep the painful moments and the challenging moments and the messy moments in life. But when we have a system we can rely on, those moments become less chaotic and they take our legs out from underneath us less frequently and for shorter amounts of time because we can recognize what's going on and we have tools to lean on. And again, a structured approach that we know works for us. And beyond that, I think we can also build in something that feels nourishing and nurturing to the type of peace we want to create for ourselves and to the connections we want to build with our children and for our children, which doesn't require us to have that between each other as co-parents, but it just requires us to create space for the
Hmm.
other co-parent to also have that with our child.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of what I'm hearing here is that, doing something like this on our own, we're going to do the best that we can.
Yeah,
But to bring in someone who sees these types of dynamics playing out between co-parents or with step-parents and with children, with stepchildren, you can help people to define what that aspirational way of all of this working, what that looks like,
yes,
right? So that there's an
exactly.
opportunity over time to prepare for, look at how things went, and continue to move in a direction towards the type of dynamic that you most want to have. And like you were saying earlier, not default into reactivity or fear-based. I don't
Yeah,
want to rock the boat, even though this isn't in alignment with my values, because I don't want to piss the other person off. It
mhm,
becomes a really disempowered place to be operating out of. And
yeah,
over time, that doesn't feel very good. So,
yeah,
I know that boundaries is part of the work that you do, but you mentioned values too to help inform how do I want this to look? How will this feel
absolutely.
good to me and for the family that I'm creating?
Absolutely. And I think a key piece is this isn't just philosophy. This is very practical. This is very tangible. These are tiny moments, right? Transformation and major shifts happen in the tiny moments where we're building a new muscle. Right. And I think that's the part that's often missed. So this isn't meant to be a lot of thinky and heady stuff. You will open up your mind to new concepts, yes. But the way that we really live into them and the way that I support my clients and quite literally like love to work myself out of the job. That's my number one goal and number one purpose is to help you build this and then send you on your merry way. And I'm here if you need a touchstone, but yeah, you are good to go. The whole point is to remove the referees and the third parties out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because
Can you give us just a couple of examples of what that looks like tactically? Like, what are some of these small shifts that
yeah,
people,
yeah.
yeah.
So, for example, learning how to take a pause when things are like when your co-parent says something and you could just feel your blood boiling and you're like no longer in the room and it feels like the world is on fire. Right? Like, and learning even what does that physiologically look like in your body? Because it could be a million things, and I can name a few, but remember, this is just a few. It could be so many other things. We can have numbing in our brain, like confusion and lack of focus. We can have heat, like I said, rising through our core, maybe in our belly, maybe in our chest, maybe feeling really flushed in the face. We can have really sweaty palms. Our limbs and especially extremities like hands, fingers can start to tremble.
Hmm.
It could look like so many different things, and it's really useful to start to recognize and tune in. What does it look like for me? And
Hmm.
what is the point of no return compared to what is the point where I can notice the sign that something's happening and I can start to pay attention and I have an opportunity for intervention? Because maybe once it's to this other sign, that's it. The train's left the building, buckle up. We're off, right? The roller coaster is it's off. Now all we can do is ride it out for this time. Right? But and the idea is it's not perfection. Your kids don't need perfection, and you're never going to get there because you're not a machine, you're a human. The idea is as we are learning, as we're gaining this awareness, as we're gaining the insights, as we're, and every piece, every time. I personally learn the most when I fall on my face. The times that I fail or, things go wrong is when just something about those moments becomes really sticky and I'm like, I'm going to remember that and I'm not going to do it that way next time. And those are gifts. Again, those are opportunities for insights of what worked, what didn't work. How did I feel? Did it feel good? Am I moving in the right direction? So it's really about those tiny moments, right? How else can I look at that? For example, another one, we talk a lot about leaning in with curiosity rather than judgment. Now, as human beings,
Hmm.
all judge, and most of us are conditioned. That's how our society functions, right? It is not a negative stain on our existence. It's just what we've learned to do. But we get to learn how to approach a situation in a different way that creates a lot more power and peace for us and gives us many more opportunities for success as it comes to responding and interacting with another, right? Especially when we have a really serious goal like ensuring the emotional security for our kids and
Right.
having to interact with this person on a regular basis for many, many, many more years and decades to come. So again, okay, I see this. It doesn't make logical sense for any of these pieces to line up in any way other than the way I've mapped them out in my head. Great. What else might you not know about the situation that may still be
Hmm.
there? And that, like, can we lean in with curiosity? Can we ask a question? Can we create room to really hear and then get very, very interested in what is being communicated to us? To step outside of ourselves, to just create space for that. And again, that's a skill, that's a huge muscle a lot of us have never used, right? Or very rarely. So, so it takes these moments, but the idea is over time the more we lean in and the more that we notice and the more that we embrace opportunities to utilize these small muscles, they become stronger and it becomes easier. We can recognize things faster. We can shift to a new perspective or a new response faster. And more importantly, we're no longer self abandoning as we are gaining these skills and leaning into
Hmm.
them. So it feels really good because regardless of we didn't get the outcome we wanted, but at least we can be proud of how we navigated that situation. And that is interestingly extremely fulfilling and
Hmm.
makes all the difference for people.
Yeah. I mean, this is why you and I get along. I mean, all of this stuff's like part and parcel to what, I do either in divorce coaching or in men's work, but leading with curiosity,
Yeah.
huge. Figuring out what my signs are for getting dysregulated too, because we can talk about it generally, but
Yes.
many of us have telltale signs of this is what anger tends to feel like and present like in my body. Here's what
Yes.
fear tends to present or how it presents in my body. And
Yes.
coming into awareness of those, like you said, can help us to stop from going over the cliff.
Exactly. And
Maybe
these
I
are
need that
just
pause. Maybe I need the timeout because if I don't acknowledge that and we keep going, now the reactivity and the fear and the control, all of
yeah.
that's at play, and then that's going to negatively impact the whole situation.
Exactly. And we have all kinds of other tools, both for the self and an actual framework for to walk through. Like when I'm communicating with my co-parent about my child, how am I going to communicate so that it best lands for them? And
Mhm.
often what's missed is there's two pieces to communication, and there's more than that, but the two main ones are there's me communicating my message and getting the information out and over to the other side. But the other piece is the other side needs to receive it.
Hmm.
So, how can I set myself up for best success for them to actually hear my message with hopefully an open heart and open ears? Right. And it's not about taking responsibility for the other person's emotions, but it's about, again, how can I set myself up and them up for best success?
Yeah.
Because you are a team working. If you, let's say, we talk about this frequently, you guys are co CEOs of your children's childhood and well-being. So in that regard, you have to work together, not because somebody deserves it or you owe them anything, but because that is the responsibility, right? Like if you had a business, you would have to both be partners working together to ensure the health and well-being of the business. And that's exactly what you're doing here, except your children are the business.
Yeah. Well, I think that illuminates too something you've alluded to, but maybe we haven't said specifically, which is you can work with couples that are wanting to figure out their dynamic together,
Yeah.
right? But you can also work with an individual, especially if there's not even really any engagement. And in fact, there's a lot of tension and conflict with that other spouse. You're still helping them to do what they can do, to feel empowered and to create the best possible outcomes that they can even without the participation or the cooperation of the other spouse.
100%. And more importantly, again, giving their children the gift of having access to the other spouse. Now, if they don't want to, that's on them. And that's a decision they usually come to when they're older.
Hmm.
But at least you're not contributing to what essentially is alienation, and it's often unintentional and it's very subtle, and it has to do with, again, polarizing the kids, making them feel, essentially making them carry the emotional load and burden
Hmm.
for adult things that they are not capable of really carrying that load for, and it robs them significantly of necessary energy and resources for their own development, because kids are supposed to be kids. They're supposed to test boundaries and push all your buttons and be mischievous. That is their job. That is exactly how they learn and how they develop and how they understand who they want to be and what is and isn't appropriate. But it's not about telling them, it's about giving them the freedom and the space. And frequently what can happen is it's only years and years down the line when kids grow up that they come to the parent and say, you robbed me of my relationship with the other parent. And they're like,
Hmm.
what? I gave you choice. I was standing behind you. I was protecting you, and everything I did was for you. And it can be so confusing, disorienting, and extremely painful for both parties. And in some cases, that in and of itself can lead to estrangement. So the
Hmm.
idea is that's why I say this work is so nuanced. It's very difficult to get into all the nitty-gritty of what we explore together, but that's exactly the
Yeah.
value of taking that deep dive and very intentionally creating this system and this dynamic and keeping all of the pieces at least front and center and in a place where you can consider them all.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're bringing in some of the future implications of the current day decisions,
Yeah.
right? In mentioning that you may have the best of intentions now for your child and protecting them. But then as they come of age, they're going to be looking back at these things and they may feel different. And then it may impact your relationship with them down the road. Anyone going through something for the first time has a real difficulty in connecting, again, the decisions I'm making today with how things are going to play out 5 or 10 years from now. But someone like you is in this situation of watching people live through these dynamics again and again, and you can help to inform, again, the present day decisions so that not just providing the safety now, but also ensuring that you continue to have a good relationship into the future, which I know
Exactly.
for many parents is something that they so desperately want.
Absolutely. And I think one of the additional challenges of being able to navigate that on your own is not only the fact, as you said, that they've never been through this and they're not sure how this looks and what to look for. But I think also because at the surface level, it's so different and how it meets the eye compared to what's really going on underneath. So some of the factors that drive children to say, I don't want to see the other parent, maybe they're getting the sense that, you're not on board with it, or that it would hurt you, or that, they would be betraying you, or they're sensing that you have attention or some negative emotion towards, their other parent. And so they're trying to take care of you essentially is what's going on. And it's not their job or responsibility, and they don't know how to do it. And if they were to continue to do that or do that to any degree, it is sucking up necessary energy that, again, as I said, they need for their own development to
Hmm.
just be kids.
Yeah.
And then again, so because they don't have the ability, the insights, the wisdom, the tools, skills, you name it, life experience to even understand that, they then, by the time they do, when they're older, just blame you.
Hmm.
So that's how those dynamics come to be. It's not that anybody's doing anything wrong. No one's doing this on purpose.
Right.
But nonetheless, right, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So even though you aren't aware of it, you're not doing this on purpose, the idea is it does still happen. And so
Yeah.
again, I think just really taking a very intentional approach to all of this and educating yourself and creating something that is sustainable, lasting, and allows you to show up as your best self and truly create that peace that I know we all crave, especially after divorce. I've been there. I think that's the value of investing in some additional resources and
Yeah.
support.
I mean, I see it. Everything that you just shared really hits. I've got a client right now who's got three kids. One's finishing high school, two are out. And, they've been divorced for 2 years, and he just expected that he would see a lot more of his kids.
Mhm.
But he feels very alone, right? The kids just don't come over that often. And why? Well, one of the contributors is that mom gives him crap when they spend time with dad. And so it puts him in a position of feeling like, well, some of them are adults, like they need to push back on mom if she's doing that. But then do they really want to do that? And then he's not engaging her in that conversation because he feels like it should be. And basically, the whole thing's not moving in a better direction. And it's breaking his heart because he wants more time with his kids, but he can also understand that they don't want to make their own lives more complicated. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's dozens of situations like that where everyone's really kind of hurting and not getting what they truly want and need from this new family dynamic, but people don't know how to proceed or move forward and create a new dynamic for the family to exist in. And so it just continues unhappily.
And unfortunately, the reality is parents are always going to be parents. And yes, our kids grow up, but they're still going to be kids. They're going to be our kids, and they're going to view us a certain kind of way. And what you just shared, and it's so common, is we're looking for kids to start to take on adult responsibilities. They're not the
Mhm.
ones that are needing to be having these conversations. And even if they are, it requires the parental involvement to empower them and to, right, to lead the way. We can't just hand it off to our kids and say, well, if they wanted it to be different, it would be different. Because we're the leaders, we are the adults, and they're looking to us to help them navigate this. And they didn't choose the divorce, remember. They had no
Right.
say in many cases.
Yeah. Well, so I know that you've been trained in this BH2O framework. So it's not just wide open, co-parenting coaching. There's actually a particular process and a structure to what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes BH2O unique?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So I think it is future focused. And as I said, it really focuses not just on the behavioral change where we're like policing your speech and telling you what language to use or which behaviors to exhibit and not exhibit. It really gets to the heart of the conflict. As I shared, that lives in our heart, and that has to do with some aspects of forgiveness, and not just for a co-parent, for ourselves, for the past. It has to do with building a real system for effective communication, exchanging information in a predictable and reliable way that is effective, as well as making shared decision making. And again, owning our part in how we're showing up that is either adding to the conflict or reducing it. And the reason I talk so much about conflict is because the greatest predictor for how well kids weather during and post a separation or divorce of their parents is their exposure to conflict, and specifically
Mm.
the duration, the degree, meaning severity, and the frequency of said conflict. So the more we can reduce conflict, the better off kids will be. The more conflict they're exposed to, the worse off they're going to be. And it impacts them not only on their social emotional level and development, it impacts their academic abilities and success. It impacts their interpersonal relationships with how will they adjust to and deal with life as well as with other people.
Hmm.
It impacts how their career and eventually earning potential, and even their mental and physical health in a variety of ways. It tends to lead to depression, anxiety, and a whole host of other challenges. So that's really the reason we're talking so much about conflict, is because having effective role models, their parents, exhibiting effective conflict resolution skills, meaning, yes, it's challenging. This may not be my favorite person, but we can get along enough to share information and make decisions and have a plan and a system for that, is critical.
Hmm.
That's everything. And so essentially, if you think about it, we become what we see, what we grow up around.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because I oftentimes will say that conflict is just inevitable, right? And if I look at conflict simply as two people having a different view of the same thing,
Yeah.
right? So there's a gap in between their understanding and their relationship. We had different experiences growing up, different family influence, different geographical influence,
Mhm.
and much of our lives through adolescence were very, very different in terms of values and behaviors that were modeled to us. We bring all of that,
Yes.
into our adult life. And so inherently, we're going to relate to things differently. And like you said, it's really about the conflict resolution skills. It's not about the absence of conflict, but as those skills get better, we can address it before it grows into something that becomes more damaging or toxic. And we're actually modeling, like you said, the behaviors that we want our kids to pick up on, which is we're not always going to see eye to eye, but here's how we get through that and
Yeah.
come out on the other side with something that works for us.
And I think I should probably add a little bit more because I
Yeah.
realized I didn't really answer your question. So we do that. And I know this is where we align really well, James, because I know that you do this for your clients too. So we start off with, what is your co-parenting why? What is most important to you? How will you know that you've done your job, so to speak, right? That your
Mhm.
job is complete as a parent. And the access point for that is, what are our shared values we want to instill in our kids? And of course, in order to instill the values, we first have to embody the values, and not just when our kids are watching or around us, but really all the time, right? So that's a piece that we explore together and build and create together. And then we literally, throughout the entire 16 weeks of the program, it's very structured curriculum. I have slides, I have videos, we have worksheets, and we have reflective questions that we explore together. Um, we are really building, you guys are building as the co-parents or co-parent, because as you said, I also work one-on-one. You are building a two-page business plan for your co-parenting, something that is easy, actionable, strategic, and structured, but it's values aligned. So unlike a co-parenting agreement that will be very effective, but then will likely need modification, because it's values aligned, it flexes and grows as your role shifts, as your children grow and their needs evolve and change, as maybe your co-parenting dynamic changes. Or I know for me, parenting roles change. I just went through a major parenting identity shift, and it was scary and beautiful all at the same time, because that's how those moments go. Because our children need different things from us as they grow, right? To truly be supportive for them, and to help them and encourage them and create an environment for them to grow and step into their autonomy and power, et cetera, and leadership of their own. So that's really what this program creates, is a two-page business plan. And of course, goals are beautiful, but without boundaries to ensure that they are executionable, it's just a fantasy and it's kind of useless. So that's another piece that we create together as well, of course, negotiated from the why, so
Mhm.
that everything is cohesive and fluid and really melts together in a beautiful way that feels supportive and will sustain you for the remainder of your co-parenting journey.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you providing some of those specifics, and behavior change takes a while for sure. So the 16-week, duration for the program makes a lot of sense for charting out a new direction and being able to put some things into practice, see how they went, and then continue to build on those until you get to a new way of relating that's more productive than where you came from.
And more importantly, more actionable and accessible in the moment, right? Like maybe we created something, we're like, this is going to be beautiful. And then The moment hits, you use it and it's useless and it didn't work at all. It's like, great, we need to readjust that. Let's iterate. What happened there? Let's look at that again. Because the idea is, right, we need to be able to access it in the moments we need it most. And as you said, habit formation is really what we're doing. We are building new habits that will feel sustainable throughout.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. We should probably wrap things up here. But for anyone who's watching this and is interested in learning more about this particular program or working with you, what's the best way to find you?
I think the best way is to email me at Maria at Synergistic Stepparenting, 2Ps.com. But of course, I am on LinkedIn as Maria Natapov. I'm on Facebook as Maria Natapov. You can go to my website, synergisticstepparenting.com. So yeah, any way you'd like to connect.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll put all of those links in the description to the video, but thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for making space for this really rich conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it was valuable to the viewers.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. All right, thank you.